This week on Engage the Sage.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucier. Welcome to this week's episode of Engage the Sage. This week, I'm going to tell you about a student who missed the final exam in one of my classes. Now, this is a story from a few years ago, and I'm very excited to tell this story. I'm actually really excited to hear what you think about this story, because over the years in my telling of this story, I've got a lot of different reactions. So, in the comments below, tell me what you would do. A number of years ago, a student in my advanced social psychology class sent me an email the day before her final saying that she was not going to be able to take my final. Reason she gave? Pretty interesting one. Her family home had been destroyed by a tornado. She needed to go home right away to help her family with the situation. She was going to leave campus, probably not coming back. Add in some more context, this was a graduating senior. This is a student to be finishing her degree at my university and will be leaving the university presumably forever. So she's going to miss my final. To tell you about where her situation was at that point, she had an A in my class to that point. In fact, it wasn't just an A, it was a high A. Mathematically, she actually needed less than 50% of the points on the final exam to keep that A. And the only way a student performing that well would not get at least 50% of the points on that final exam would be if something catastrophic happened to them, like having their family home destroyed by a tornado. So I had a couple options as the instructor in this situation. One option is to give that student a grade of incomplete and wait until she took the final exam to complete her grade. Second, missing my final exam, I could give her a 0. Third, I could elect to waive the final exam and grade her on the work that she had completed to date. There are pros and cons to all of those options, and I had to weigh those options as the instructor, as many of us toward the end of the semester, this is why we're doing this video now toward the end of the semester, have to make decisions about what we're going to do when a student right at the end can't complete the last thing. In this situation, I weighed my options and I elected to waive that student's final exam. I contacted her, I said, hey, thank you so much for letting me know. Absolutely, don't worry about the final exam in my class. Go be with your family. I'm so sorry about your home. You will get an A in advanced social psychology. This is what made the most sense to me. I felt that that was a true reflection of the students' learning in the class. I thought it's the grade they would have earned had they taken the final exam, and that was the decision that I could sleep best at night having made. Had that student not had the A, what I probably would have done is offered them options to choose from. I probably would have offered them the option to either take the incomplete and take the final later, if they were trying to, for instance, earn an A that they didn't already have, or to take the opportunity to waive the final exam and to take their grade to date. So if a student did not have the A, I probably would have involved them in that decision rather than make that decision for them. And in this case, I'm certain had I laid those options out for the student, that is the option they would have selected. I felt good about that decision. I absolutely did not feel good about the situation that the student was experiencing, but I tried to empathize with that situation. I tried to think about where my emotional energy would be, what my psychological experience would be, and realizing that there is no way I could have devoted the energy or the time to succeed on that final exam. And being a graduated senior who is going home to rebuild the family home, I don't think I would have wanted to come back to do that incomplete. I use this as an example when I talk about teaching. I've used this in teaching workshops. I've used this in my courses on teaching. And it's interesting, I get a variety of responses when I lay out the situation, what my options were, and a variety of reactions when I tell them what I chose. The most common reaction I get is people telling me they would have done the same thing that I did. That given that student's situation, given that they had done so well, only needed less than 50% on the final exam, given the magnitude of the crisis they were experiencing, they probably would have graded them and work to date and given that student the A in the class. That is the grade the student rightfully earned. I have, however, gotten some more negative reactions to my decisions. For instance, one of my colleagues, when I shared this situation with him, said that I actually cheated that student out of their opportunity to complete my class and that I took away the closure that they deserved in my class by finishing that final exam, and that I behaved unethically as a result. I was actually very taken aback when I had kind of received that feedback, because I felt I was doing the thing that the student deserved empathetically in that situation. I never thought I was taking anything away from the student, and I didn't prevent them from learning in my class. One of my colleagues asked, when talking about the situation, talked about the purpose of the class is to produce learning, not necessarily complete assessment. So if the student learned everything in the class, you probably did your job. And that's something that makes me feel a little bit better. But it is important to kind of consider that when we're dealing with these situations, these are dilemmas. There are going to be people who potentially have different reactions and would have made different decisions than the ones that you did. Very recently, in a workshop that I was giving, I had one participant in that workshop tell me that I should have given that student the 0 because that was the grade that they deserved by not taking the final exam. I would say for me, that was the least good of the 3 options. But again, that was my personal decision as the instructor. And again, I'm pointing out that when we're making decisions about our teaching, when we're creating our teaching practices and our teaching policies, you are going to run into situations where your colleagues and maybe your students may not agree with those decisions or those policies. So the question is, what do you do? And my recommendation is do the thing that is consistent with your teaching philosophy and your teaching practices. You've heard me advocate for an empathetic course design perspective. You've heard me talk about supporting my students through the challenges they experience. For me, the decision that I made is consistent with my teaching philosophy and my teaching practices. When people share their divergent opinions from mine and how dealing with this situation, that's fine, that's great. But I would rather have had the teacher who made the empathetic decision if I were the person experiencing that challenge or that crisis than being in a class with someone who decided to not appreciate that concern. Now, one of the things, and the reason again we're doing this video now, is we're coming up on the end of the semester. It is likely that some of your students are going to have life hit them hard in these last couple of weeks. It's likely some of your students are going to not get that final project done, not take that final exam. And what I want you to do is to anticipate proactively what you're going to do when you get that email. I want you to think about, as we come up on these last couple of weeks, of how you're going to support your students' learning and success, and how you're going to set a policy for your class about what you're going to do when that work doesn't come in. Because I wish I had thought about what my policy might be in that situation before the crisis was upon me. And what I'm inviting you to do is to put yourself into that situation where you know the answer to the question before your students ask. I want to give you another couple quick tips on things we can be doing at that end of the semester to support that student's learning and success. First of all, remind them of the stuff coming up. Remind them of the final projects. Remind them of those final exams. Give them recommendations for how to prepare and how to succeed in demonstrating their learning on those projects and exams. Tell your students that you want them to succeed and be authentic and mean it when you say that. We should be doing this all the time, but the end of the semester is an especially good time to bring empathy and peace to our classes. And for those of you who haven't seen this channel before, P stands for preparation, expertise, authenticity, caring, and engagement. So bring peace and empathy to your class at the end of the semester and be there to support your students and their success through the final weeks. In the comments below, I want to hear what you would have done in that situation where that student's house got destroyed by the tornado. Would you have making them take the incomplete? Would you have given them the 0? Would you have waived that final exam and had their grade stand as earned? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would also love to hear what you do at the end of the semester to support your students' learning and success, and what you do when they miss those big things right at the end because life hits them hard. Thank you for watching this episode of Engage the Sage. Please like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, share us on social media, and we'll see you next time on Engage the Sage.